everybody, welcome back to Q-Tips. We are the Video Store Junkies, and we are back once again to bring you some amazing selections of movies, possibly TV shows to watch over the weekend on streaming. And we're going to get this going just like we always do. And this time, I'm going to pass it over to Bill.
Oh, well, we were just watching NASA crash a spaceship into an asteroid. And that makes me think of one of my favorite filmmakers, the guy who, filmed the fake moon landing. That's one Stanley Kubrick.
Ooh.
Definitely on the top 10 list of any decent list of greatest directors of all time. And I have two of my favorites of his. There's actually none of his films that are not my favorites. But here's one that's a controversial classic and another that is, I think, an unappreciated gem. And I'll start with that one. It's 1975's Barry Lyndon, which made money but was not the hit they were hoping when it came out. It is an absolutely gorgeous film. It's like the closest thing to every frame a painting that you're ever going to see. Just some of the most gorgeous cinematography ever done. It's a strange little story about a roguish Irish gambler, soldier, all-around opportunist, played by Ryan O'Neal, who either gives an amazing performance or gives a typical lousy Ryan O'Neal performance. And it's hard to tell because I think he does exactly what Kubrick wanted him to do. He's not showing, especially in the early part of the film, he's not showing a whole lot of emotion, but I think maybe that was the point. Kubrick was never really an actor's director. It's got a gorgeous Marissa Berenson who is just absolutely ravishing. The whole movie's ravishing. It's beautiful to look at. And so we watch this guy and there's not a whole lot of likable people in this movie, and he kind of, things happen to him and he falls into place and more stuff happens and he takes opportunity and he does one decent thing in his life and lives to regret it. Look, it's a slow burn. No question about that. This is a movie you watch when you're not feeling like, need to have some excitement in your life. Just appreciate the beautiful cinematography and everything else about it. So Barry Lyndon, it is on Canopy, which I don't think I have, but I think it's one of those sites that shows classy movies. Not a lot of shark stuff.
Canopy is I believe the service you can get through your local library. So if you have a library card, yeah,
well, there you go.
I actually wanted to just second that recommendation, although it's been probably 15 years or more since I've watched Barry Lyndon. It's one of those movies that's kind of stuck with me, and I've actually been meaning to rewatch it, but I've been holding out because I think it's a crime. This film has not been released in 4K yet, and
wow.
Yeah, just sorry, I'm getting way off topic here, but I think I mentioned to you guys I got a 4K TV a few months ago, finally upgraded, and one of the films that I've watched in 4K was The Shining. And I've watched a lot of movies in 4K since then, and not a single one of them has come close to touching just how different it is watching The Shining in 4K. Like, to really appreciate his films, I think you have to watch them in 4K. And like you said, I mean, Barry Lyndon is literally like a lot of these shots are actually based on classic paintings, and
Right.
it's just such a crime. I can't wait to watch this in 4K. But hey, maybe if I had a public library card, which I do not, I would be watching it right now on Canopy. So
Oh, there you go. Have you watched Suspiria in 4K?
I have not. Have you?
Oh,
Is it recommended?
Oh, very pretty. Very pretty. Turn it up real loud and you'll hear the neighbors knocking on your door to make sure you're okay. Yeah, but you're right. Barry Lyndon would look some movies don't really get improved by seeing every detail, but Kubrick's would be the exception to that. Oh, and I need to throw this to Paul.
Oh, I thought you were going to throw it to Zach. Oh, yeah. Barry Lyndon is one that's been on my list, and the main thing I knew about it was the Mad Magazine parody, which was like Bory Lyndon.
Yes,
but,
yes.
Yeah,
Harsh, but fair.
but yeah, it's been on my list, so that's good to know. Oh, so let's see. My theme this week. Well, you could have your two choices. It could be things we watched on our anniversary, or it could be animated shows that have Eugene Cordero in them. So the first one I have is Little Demon, Currently streaming on Hulu, I guess DirecTV, Fubo, and FX. So this is an animated series, and it stars Lucy DeVito as a young teenage girl who also just happens to be the Antichrist. Aubrey Plaza is her mother, and her ex, Satan, is played by Danny DeVito. It is very funny, very filthy, very violent. Lots of cartoon nudity, lots of cartoon gore, lots of cartoon violence, lots of profanity, but it is super fun. It's just really fun, and it's kind of neat to have Danny DeVito playing against his daughter. But she's sort of tries to be a normal teenager, but she just happens to be the Antichrist. Her best buddy Bennigan is played by Eugene Cordero. There are other people in it. There's the great Phil LaMarr has some roles in it, and even Michael Shannon shows up for a few episodes as well. I think they're building the story there. Really fun stuff. Filthy, funny, and actually, I swear, the last episode, Shelley and I were like, "Was this like a very special episode of Little Demon?" We're like, "Oh my god!" It actually got kind of serious, which was really weird. Great show, highly recommended. It's fun. So speaking of Little Demons, I'll pass this to Zach.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it, I guess. So I actually have a theme this week. I don't always do a theme, but I decided this week I'm gonna try to come up with one. And my theme this week is TV shows that need absolutely no promotion whatsoever because they are streaming on services provided by multi-billion-dollar companies, and each of them probably have multi-million-dollar marketing budgets. So there's really no point in me recommending them because you've probably seen ads for them all over the place. But you know what? I don't care because this is our podcast. We do what we want. So these are shows that I've been enjoying lately. So I'm going to recommend them anyways. Maybe maybe you've seen the ads and you've just been like, nah. But somehow this podcast is what's going to convince you to watch these shows. So the first show I'm going to recommend is a new show on Disney Plus. The name of the show is Andor. It is a new Star Wars show. It's about Cassian Andor. You guys remember Cassian Andor, right? From the Star Wars movies?
Crickets.
Yeah. No, of course not. Of course you don't, because even if you saw Rogue One, you probably don't even remember the character. But hey, guess what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that you don't remember this character. In fact, I would go so far as to say it doesn't matter if you've never seen Rogue One, if you've never seen a Star Wars, if you don't even know what a Darth Vader is, you might still enjoy this movie. No, this is a prequel to Rogue One. It had to be a prequel because, spoiler alert, the character dies at the end of that movie. So they kind of had to do a prequel, which is always kind of iffy. I think we've talked about this multiple times because there's only so much you can do with a prequel. But luckily, I think they chose a character that is likable. The actor Diego Luna, who plays him, is a really great actor. But then they also, there's not a lot of background about him in the movie, so they get to flesh out the character. And like I said, this is a great sci-fi show without necessarily having to be a great Star Wars show, if that makes sense. So far, I mean, there are a lot of the Star Wars tropes. It's about kind of him becoming part of the Resistance, and obviously, the Empire is out to get him. But none of that stuff really matters. Again, if you've never seen a Star Wars, if you're not familiar with the franchise, I would actually argue if you enjoy science fiction, you could probably watch this show and still enjoy it. Really well made. It's actually, I guess, created for television by, if I remember correctly, the guy who, oh god, I'm blanking now, but he co-wrote Rogue One, but he's also got some other great writing credits under his belt. He also wrote Michael Clayton, if anyone has ever seen that movie. So anyways, this one's on Disney Plus. Like I said, of course, like all Star Wars stuff is. And unlike a lot of the recent Star Wars TV shows, it's actually pretty enjoyable. It's got a great cast. Fiona Shaw's in there as well. A couple other really great actors that I didn't recognize, but great cast, really well written, really well directed. I'm only 3 episodes in because that's all that's aired, but so far this is a hard recommend from me. So that being said, I'm gonna pass this over to. I don't have a really great transition. I don't know. So I'm just going to send this over to my favorite member of the Resistance. I don't know. Renee, I'm struggling here, folks. Okay, it's been a long weekend. It's only Monday. Renee, what's your first pick for this weekend?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So, my first recommendation is a movie from the 80s, and so basically back in the 50s, this object fell from space, and scientists were able to contain this object. And unfortunately, skip forward to the 80s, a bunch of goofus dudes always end up finding this thing and releasing it, and all hell breaks loose. People get infected and essentially turn into zombies. And this movie stars Jason Lively, otherwise known as Rusty from National Lampoon's European Vacation, and one Mr. Tom Atkins doing what Tom Atkins does best, which is
seducing
just looking
women.
good.
Oh.
Yeah. Exactly, looking good
right.
and seducing the ladies. And he's got like the best opening introduction scene that I've probably ever seen anywhere. Anyway, this movie is from 1986, and it is Night of the Creeps. And it is available.
Yay!
On Pluto.
Fun movie.
Yeah, it is fun.
Super fun.
Yeah, very fun, very goofy, and I enjoyed it a lot. I think you guys will too. So yeah, so that is my first recommendation, and I will just toss this right back over to you, Bill.
Well, thank you. Continuing with the Stanley Kubrick theme. So, okay, on Netflix and HBO Max, 1971, still super controversial. I mean, God, this movie's now, 50 years old? And is still a controversy? Clockwork Orange. Wow. What a movie. What can you say about this? If you haven't seen it, you owe it to yourself. Now, yes, it's not a pleasant flick. It's one of the most... Kubrick did not have a great positive view of humanity. I think that comes through a lot. And but hey, this is just an amazing one. Made a fortune, could never be made today, and it stars Malcolm McDowell as Alex, a intelligent, charismatic sociopath, absolute 100% sociopath in a dystopian near future in England, ripped from today's headlines. Wow, it's just amazing. It's just absolutely amazing. And you got to give Malcolm McDowell credit. He's literally in every scene. He's almost in every shot. It's hard to think of another movie where one actor so dominates, is placed in that position. And he was a fairly young, untried actor at the time. Kubrick saw him in the movie If, which is also pretty good, and said, "That's my Alex." He's just evil, but, a watchable kind of evil. Everyone in this movie is evil. There is no good one. There's no good person in this movie. Normally, I hate that, but given the world that he's created here, there shouldn't be any good people. No good will come from being good. So, if you're just in one of those, it's an election year, so if you've really got a down view of humanity and you just want to see it with some great cinematography, amazing music by Wendy Carlos, just brilliant on every level. 1971 Clockwork Orange. Get some Jiffy Pop popcorn, bring the kids in, call up Grandma, tell her it's movie night, and enjoy one of the great ones by the master. And I now send this off to Paul.
Why, thank you. That was another one that I learned about through Mad Magazine. I knew the whole plot before I ever saw the movie.
What did they call it?
I can't really...
I think
I remember something.
I think I do. I think it was A Crockwork Lemon.
Something. Yes. That sounds familiar.
Doesn't that sound about right?
And I just remember knowing that he's not hitting her over the head with a ceramic elephant. So that's no, when I saw the movie, I was like, oh yeah, but I knew the whole thing, the whole plot. They got it pretty good too. Anyway, great movie. Second recommendation for that one. Well, my second film, again, we're dealing with films that Shelley and I watched on our anniversary, or shows, or shows that have what was his name? Eugene Cordero in them. So the next show I've got is Star Trek Lower Depths, showing on Paramount Plus. Is it Playlist? I think it's just Paramount Plus. That's about it. And so this is interesting because it's considered canon in the Star Trek universe. It's an animated show. It's a goofy comedy. It's by one of the writers for Rick and Morty. And now, when I first watched it, it didn't quite rub me the right way because it was so fan servicey and so fan wanky and dropped so many names. Like what they knew everything that was going on the Enterprise, even though they're not on the Enterprise. But it kind of grew on me because I really like the characters and I like the actors. It's about a group of lower. They work on the lower decks. They're the lower level crewmen on a starship, and they happen to be on the Cerritos, which is a California class starship. So instead of being like the Enterprise, which is the flagship, and they get first contact and all these things like this, the Cerritos does things like second contact or shitty little diplomatic missions, or oh yeah, we got to deliver this generator to this planet. So they're just kind of like you've got like the second class citizens on the second class starship, but it's really fun. It stars Tawny Newsome as Ensign Beckett Mariner, and you've got Jack Quaid as Ensign Brad Boimler. You've got Noel Wells as the Devana Tendi, who is a. It's kind of neat because she's traditionally in Star Trek they were the Orion slave girls, but she's an Orion who works as a Starfleet officer. And Eugene Cordero, there he is as Samantha Rutherford, who has a cybernetic implant. This takes place just like slightly after Next Generation. In fact, they've had like at one point Boimler, spoilers, was briefly assigned to drawing blank. All right, see, my brain is just shot. Anyway, it's great. It's a fun show. It does have tons of little Easter eggs and references to Star Trek, but even skipping that, it's really fun. These characters are great. I love the chemistry between them. And again, it's so weird to see this as it's considered canon. So much so, here, you want to have spoilers. Next season of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, there's going to be I don't know if a cameo or might even be just like a guest spot of both Tawny Newsome and Jack Quaid as their characters from this. Though it's going to have to be like a holodeck thing because this takes place 100+ years after Strange New Worlds. But they said they'll be like live action, so it'll be fun to see Jack Quaid with blue hair or purple hair. Fun stuff. I really enjoy it. If you're a Star Trek fan, it's especially fun because if you want to pick out the references. Otherwise, it's just this kind of goofy, weird thing. And again, since it's canon, that's just the funniest thing to me. Anyway, so that's Star Trek Lower Decks playing on Paramount Plus. And speaking of Starship officers, Starfleet officers, I pass this to Zach.
Oh, thanks. I thought you were going to say, speaking of people who belong in the lower decks, but I appreciate it. Okay, well, you know what? Gave Disney Plus a little bump. I hope they appreciate the free advertising. I hope that it gets them some additional subscribers. So we're going to move on now to another company that probably needs some help. I think that they're having some struggles. So I'm gonna give them the old Video Store Junkies bump here. So the second show that I want to recommend today, and the second show that I've been watching a lot of recently. In fact, I've just been catching up because I missed a couple episodes. That's actually maybe the best way to watch this show because it is a little slow. I think that's one of the main criticisms that people have of this first season, and I think it's valid. It's a little bit slow. There's not a ton of action, but if you kind of watch a couple episodes at a time, I think it's a great way to kind of consume this one. And it's appropriate maybe that it's kind of slow because it's based on a series of books that are maybe a little bit slow at times. And I am, of course, talking about The Lord of the Rings. And I'm, of course, talking about Amazon Prime's new Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. And if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings, the books, maybe the movies, maybe you've actually never read the books and you're just a fan of the classic, now classic, Jesus Christ, this movie came out like 20 years ago. I feel so old. The now classic film series. This is not actually a direct, well, actually, it's kind of funny because this is, Andor is a prequel. This is kind of a prequel, but not really. It's not a direct prequel to those for legal reasons. But it is a precursor to those, I guess you could say, because it takes place thousands of years before them. And you might be saying, how can you make a show thousands of years before the Lord of the Rings? Obviously, I'm not going to recognize any of the characters or anything, but you'd be wrong because you forgot elves are basically immortal. So this has several characters you may recognize from the movies and or the books. You've got Galadriel in there. You've got Elrond. Elrond? What the hell? Elrond. You've got actually that's pretty much it, but it's got a couple characters you may be familiar with, and this, of course, tells the story of what happened before the rings, the famous Lord of the Rings, the Rings of the Lord, were actually forged. So it's kind of telling the origin story of the Rings of Power themselves. A lot of people before this show came out, a lot of people weren't sure what to make of it, what it's going to be about. Amazon was playing it very close to the vest, and in fact, I think we're like 4 or 5 episodes, and there are still a lot of unanswered questions, even for people who are very familiar with the lore. So it's kind of fun that we're kind of discovering a lot of things about this world. I love all of the. I don't think there's a single member of this cast that I was familiar with before I started watching the show. Kind of instantly fell in love with all of them. I think it's actually like one of the best cast shows that I've seen recently. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have any like big names. I think that's actually kind of to its benefit though, because you don't have any kind of preconceived notions about any of these people. But it's got some great performances. Like I said, it's got all of the races that you're familiar with. You got dwarves, you got elves, you got humans. You also have, I think they're actually not called hobbits in the show. I think maybe because of legal reasons, or maybe it's just hobbits don't actually exist as a race. They are called Harfoots, but they are still lovable and adorable.
Wait, can I interrupt you? Did they not spend like $1 billion to make this?
Supposedly it was $1 billion total because they have been basically developing, I think, like 5 seasons. They basically have like a 5-season arc planned out. So, from my understanding,
I just want to say, for $1 billion, you should get the rights to everything and several of the firstborn children.
Well, it's kind of a, I think it's kind of a Marvel situation where like even Disney doesn't have the rights to all the Marvel stuff because other people had the rights already. I don't know. I don't understand how any of this works, but yeah, so once again, the name of the show is The Rings of Power. It's a bit of a slow burn. Don't go in expecting like Game of Thrones because so far there is not a lot of sex or graphic violence or that sort of thing. So it is more of a traditional high fantasy thing, which, by the way, I usually hate fantasy shit. So the fact that I enjoy this says something about it. So anyways, that is my pick here. That is, once again, on Prime Video exclusively. You're welcome, Jeff Bezos. Please send the check care of Video Store Junkies for this promotion. And speaking of things that are in the rights of which are in a legal gray area. Renee, what is your second pick for the weekend?
Oh my gosh. So I'm going to take you back a little bit further now. And this movie is, it's kind of goofy. I feel like it could have maybe been a horror comedy, but it is a horror. This is a movie that really was made to be seen in the theater. So you kind of have to keep that in mind when you're watching it, because there are certain things where I think if you watched it and was like, oh man, if I was in a movie theater, this would be a little bit different. So this movie is about a doctor who has discovered a parasite, and this parasite essentially like grips you by the spine and and it grows as you are just terrified by this thing. And I won't tell you what you have to do to save your own life, but this movie is very fun, and I'm saving it till last because I feel like everyone is going to have a comment about this movie. Which is why I did not tell anyone my theme of parasites, because much as expected, you knew exactly what I was talking about. And this delightful movie is The Tingler.
Yay!
The Tingler.
Oh my god. And it is available in a lot of places. Tubi, Pluto, where else? Fubo, Roku, Redbox, Flix Flings. etc., etc.
And if you go over to Paul's house and watch it, you can actually see it in Percepto.
Yeah, I have joy buzzers hooked up to the bottom of my seat.
It'll just tickle the back of
hey.
your neck when you least expect it.
I was gonna say, I thought you were gonna say Paul will just tickle you at inappropriate moments.
Randomly, at random points in the movie, even if it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, he does that when you're watching pretty much any movie, so it's only appropriate though when you're watching
Everything in his house is Percepto.
Yeah.
You know, it's also the first film to show someone on an acid trip, and that person is Vincent Price.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah,
I think it's also the first film that was written on an acid trip, because it is the stupidest, the dumbest, most implausible plot that has ever been committed to film. But I love it.
It's so great. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah,
Come on. It's, no part of this movie makes sense. Not a single damn part. Not the beginning, not the middle, not the ending. But it's all right. That's fine. It's a great movie.
Yeah.
William Castle.
Yeah. And it keeps you going.
Yeah.
Yeah. I enjoy it. Oh my gosh.
Another in a long line of Vincent Price has a bad marriage movies. They made a whole bunch of those.
Oh, I love it so much. Oh my gosh. So, yeah. I don't know if anybody else has any other comments about The Tingler. Otherwise, does anybody have anything to sing us out with?
I just want to say about the Tingler that they installed Percepto, which, for people who don't know, little electric buzzers that were under selected seats. And when the Tingler gets loose, there's a scene where it gets loose in a theater, and the screen goes black, and Vincent Price is, scream for your lives! And they would buzz people, and they would scream and all that. But they left it. I mean, someone had to come and take these things apart, and they did, and supposedly the projectionists, who are probably a lot like Zach, that's the kind of people who get hired for that job, would just buzz people. So, Igmar Bergman is doing a nun story when she's praying to God. All of a sudden, people are getting their asses zapped. It's great.
Now,
I've been
Bill,
touched by God.
Did he say that, remembering that I was at one point a projectionist?
Yes. I forget nothing. Listen, listen. I forget important things like my wife's birthday.
Right.
And, important. But I remember stuff like that.
What job I had
an
15 years ago.
Yes. I put that in a Rolodex of things I can use against my friends, and that thing is lock solid, and I can retrieve it at a moment's notice.
Oh,
nice.
I love it.
Yeah.
Renee, I do have can I actually? I'm sure that Paul has a song, but
you're welcome to take over. Trust me.
We can throw rock paper scissors for it. Which
go
not
for
on
it.
video,
Go
so
for
I can
it.
just tell
I'm
you
so
what
excited.
I threw. Okay, well, I'm going to sing the incredible theme to Andor, based on the hit Star Wars franchise. Star Wars, give me the Star Wars. Nothing but Star Wars. Don't let them end. That's all I got.
If they should bar wars, please let these Star Wars stay.
For the weekend of October 7th, Bill recommended Barry Lyndon, available on Canopy, and A Clockwork Orange, available on HBO Max and Netflix. Paul recommended Little Demon, available on Hulu, Fubo, and FX Now, and Star Trek The Lower Decks, available on Paramount+. Zachary recommended Andor, available on Disney+, and The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, available on Prime Video. I recommended Night of the Creeps, available on Pluto, and The Tingler, available on Pluto, Tubi, Fubo, Roku, Redbox, and a handful of other places.
Sorry, Paul. Sorry to steal your thunder.
Oh, trust me. Otherwise, you would have been subjected to the theme from Star Trek Enterprise.
Oh, God.
Oh, no.
It's been a long road getting from there to here. Is that the fate
Oh, God, yeah, you
of
got
the
it.
heart?
Oh, but you're wrong. The original series had lyrics because Gene...
Oh, that's right.
Gene, I know he's a genius and we owe him a lot, but he was a son of a bitch, Roddenberry.
Yes. Yes, I forgot about
the
that.
opening theme and realized there could be money to be made in this, but alas, he had absolutely nothing to do with it. So he wrote some shit lyrics that no one has ever used ever, and every time they sold one of those things, he had to get a cut. Yeah.
Yeah.
What a guy.
Yeah. I did not know that. Now I'm looking it up.
Yeah,
I'm
that's also
curious
why he
what
like.
those lyrics were. Okay. According to lyricsondemand.com,
Okay, they're not good.
Oh no.
I go okay. I don't know. I don't know how where they would come in, so I don't know how to sing it to. But
Sure.
beyond the rim of the starlight, my love is wandering in starflight. I know he'll find in star-clustered reaches love, strange love. A star woman teaches. I know his journey
God.
never ends.
Oh, it
His
never
Star
ends.
Trek will go on forever. But tell him, well, he wanders his starry sea. Remember, remember me.
Remember me. Oh God.